Can Nintendo replicate the Switch's success with their next system? This is something that's been on my mind a lot lately, primarily because A, we're all waiting for official news on what Nintendo's next system is. We know they have something in the works that's going to probably be in the first quarter of next year. They've kind of been playfully toying around with the idea a little bit and talking a bit more about it than they have in the past. But two, also because of just how much of a monumental success the current Switch has been. In fact, one of the things that people have been keeping their eyes on right now is the lifetime sales of the system, because there is a solid chance that it just might actually beat out the PS2, becoming the top-selling system of all time. As far as current up-to-date numbers go, we know the Switch is currently sitting at just over 143 million units in sales. The PS2 initially was counted at 155, and Jim Ryan on his way out just dropped a little info like, oh, by the way, we actually hit 160 million on that, just so you know. Trying to put a bit more gap there, but we still have almost a full year left of the current Switch as far as we can guess. And on top of that, it seems like Nintendo's doing everything they can to really give a strong final push for the system, whether that's still having plenty of games coming out during this holiday season, Metroid Prime 4 sometime early next year, and even actually releasing a special edition Switch Lite that is Zelda themed, which Zelda specifically always feels to me like a break glass in case of emergency situation, where they're just looking at how many more they need to get that lifetime sales up there. And what better franchise to tie into a system to just tempt someone to buy one last Switch, especially when it's the more affordable option like the Lite. The thing is, when you look at systems that are this successful, you don't really see that success replicated in their follow-up. I'm not saying the next system is necessarily going to be a failure, far from it. A pretty solid chance is going to be a good success, but not necessarily to the same degree that the current Switch was, for a few different reasons. First off, there's just how much a system like this can end up appealing to a wider market. Part of why the Switch was able to hit the sales numbers that it did was that it revitalized the line of Nintendo systems and opened itself up to an audience that, at that point, had actually dipped out of the gaming market for a long time and dove back in because of the Switch, partially because of its more affordable price point compared to other competing systems, but also just because the gimmick of the system, swapping between dock and handheld mode, was such an easy concept to translate over to people. And as awesome as that was when the system came out, if the next system is going to be just a direct upgraded version of the Switch, it's repeating the same core concept, which isn't always enough to get someone to buy and upgrade immediately. They might eventually down the line, there could be some specific title that appeals to them, but oftentimes the original system, especially if it continues to be supported to some extent, is good enough for a lot of people. There's also the fact that this next system is going to have a lot more direct competition than the Switch did. When the Switch originally came out in 2017, there was very much this belief and energy out there that handheld gaming systems were dead. Gaming on phones just became more and more popular, and while Nintendo did still have some degree of success with their handheld system like the 3DS, it did not do nearly as well as its predecessor, the DS, and other handheld systems like the PS Vita just didn't succeed remotely. And so the original Switch really revitalized this idea that handheld gaming isn't dead, and as part of that, we're now seeing a lot more direct competition in that field. The Xbox and PlayStation have yet to really release their own handhelds, though there has been quite a bit of heavy rumors for both of them. PlayStation did release the Portal, but that's a bit of a different situation, being a remote play focused device. But what we have seen happen a lot of, and already hit the market, PC handhelds. Steam Deck in particular, but other options as well, like the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go. A lot more dedicated handheld gaming devices have been coming out that also feature that main sales pitch of something that can be used in handheld mode, but also docked for a more traditional experience if you like. And while Nintendo, of course, has the very large strength and advantage of their own first-party stuff, there's always going to be those games that you can only find on Nintendo hardware. That doesn't ultimately end up being the sales pitch for everyone. There are plenty of people who might be looking at these other dedicated PC handhelds and the kind of games that are available on there that, sure, might also be on the Switch, and not necessarily care about Switch exclusives, but do care about a lot of the stuff that's available on PC, especially when it comes to the indie market. Another factor to consider too in this whole idea of, it going up against other handhelds is pricing. One of the big things that really made the current Switch a success in my mind is how relatively affordable it was. I mean, the original system was $300, going a healthy bit below what Xbox and PlayStation systems at the time were offering, and other new handheld handhelds right now, like the Steam Deck, start off as low as $400, so a healthy bit higher. But based on what rumors and things we've been seeing for Nintendo's next system, it does sound like they might end up having to target a higher price point as well, which could get rid of that edge of being the, family-friendly, cheaper alternative to pick up. I think one of the main things that really gives me this pause on whether or not the next system will be as successful is just looking at the track record of some similar past situations. Not necessarily as extreme as like the Wii to the Wii U. That was a particularly bad situation where, the Wii U branding, I think, made it confusing for a lot of people. There were a lot of folks who, back when it was coming out, thought that it was just some kind of add-on to the Wii system and not an entirely brand new console. That whole thing was just a headache. But I think a really good example that makes a lot more sense is looking at the DS to the 3DS. The DS, for its time, was simply huge. I don't think enough people actually talk about what a big success the DS was, because yes, it's very easy to reference back to the PS2 being the top-selling system of all time. The DS isn't that far behind it, like at all. It got this close to taking over the #1 top spot, which the Switch is now accelerating closer and closer towards, but the DS just didn't quite clear that distance yet. And a large part of that success is similar to what I'm saying with the Switch in terms of not really having direct competition for its time. The DS was a big deal because of what kind of games it introduced that there was no other market for yet. The dual screen approach, the touchscreen controls, there were a lot of games on the DS that were not only appealing to traditional hardcore gamers, but also just to wider audiences, resulting in all kinds of very interesting, specific games coming out, whether you just wanted crossword puzzles or My Stop Smoking Coach. That's a real thing that released on that system, but it's a testament to how gigantic that library got and how wide of an audience it ended up reaching. And the 3DS did not end up having that same level of success. It was a successful system, but lifetime sales-wise, barely scratched being half as many as the original DS. And a large reason for this has to do with the fact that, after the DS's life cycle had been around as long as it did, it started getting more direct competition. Mobile games really began to fill that market of touchscreen controls and reach out to an audience that decided they didn't necessarily need a dedicated handheld to do the same thing. And so as fantastic as the 3DS library is and how much I enjoyed that system, I ended up not really being able to live up to the same degree of success that the DS had established. And I get the feeling that that's going to be a similar situation for this next Switch. Again, not hating on what Nintendo's going to do next, I think this system has a very good chance of being a very powerful performer, but the bar being set by the current Switch is going to be very difficult to top. Of course, there are a whole lot of other variables and factors here that we just don't know yet. The exact form this next system takes, what they're going to charge for it, and really in the grand scheme of things, what the life cycle for the system looks like, right? How many different revisions they release? Are there any major price drops for the system? Do they end up pivoting to something else a little faster this time versus the 7-year life cycle we saw on the Switch? We just don't know yet until much further in the future. So that all can play a very big role in how it ends up performing lifetime-wise. I just think that the, initial battle here compared to the first Switch is going to be a bit more significantly uphill. That's just my thoughts on it, though. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys are thinking. Do you think Nintendo's going to be able to replicate the same degree of success the Switch has with the next system? Is it something where it's still going to do fantastic and amazing, but not quite live up to it still? Is it going to somehow even surpass it? Let me know down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And until next time, I'll see you all later.